We hope that this information will then be used to help define effective protection measures at sea for leatherback turtles. And just to give you an idea of the magnitude of the problem, last year IUCN estimated that the North Atlantic leatherback population has decreased by over 60% between the 90s and now. So it's a 60% decrease within about 30 years. So please now, can you send the video and run it? Thanks.
This project is shining a light on a really important and poorly understood life, especially poorly understood life history phase that's known in the turtle community as the lost years. And that is the period from when a hatchling emerges from the beach until it returns as a mature adult.
We're the first to successfully put these tags on little leatherback turtles. Nobody's ever done that before. That is a big deal. Where do they go to grow up? What's their nursery area? None of that's known.
And then the third piece in all of this is the work of Mercator Ocean International and their team of ocean physicists and oceanographers and modelers who've been working with us to better understand the influences of oceanographic conditions on dispersal of hatchlings. And with this information, we hope that we'll be able to apply it towards conservation actions that will help to rescue some of these species and populations from the brink. I'd like to encourage you all to do your part for sea turtle conservation, and if you want to learn more, come visit www.upwell.org. That's our website where we share a lot of news about the work we're doing and the great work of our partners and collaborators around the world. And if you have the wherewithal and are able to give your time and contribute and volunteer to these organizations or provide financial support, that is, of course, very appreciated and much needed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Philippe, for this movie. Making the link with the policies, I think this is something important to know. It's not about just monitoring turtles. This is a very specific case where there is direct link with, for example, fisheries policies, because, for example, in some areas, like in Hawaii, turtles are really a bycatch of fisheries activities and fishing in general. And knowing about turtles dispersal, knowing about their behavior is also a way to better predict possible bycatch and avoid this risk, which is harmful for the conservation of biodiversity. So this is really a link also for the policies implementation. So now I will come back to the goal of this round table, where we are in terms of policies implementation, where we need to improve still, where what will be the changes in the next MFF eventually. Yes, my video, sorry. And for this, I would like to introduce my three guest speakers, and I would like to thank you for being there at the end of the day. First of all, I would like to introduce Grete Maenhout. She's working at JRC, the Joint Research Center of the Commission, in the Sustainable Resource Directorate, and she's Deputy Head of Unit for the unit related to knowledge for sustainable development and food security. That's where the Copernicus Land Service is operated in this unit, but this is also where we are preparing the new CO2 monitoring and verification center that we will use for the Paris Agreement to take assessment in the future. So very deeply involved in Copernicus. I will help also introduce Jacq Kucera. Jan is also from the Joint Research Center, but working in another directorate. So bringing another angle of, in terms of looking at Copernicus, is part of the Directorate for Space, Security and Migration. Is a research officer in the unit working on knowledge for security and migration. and as such is dealing more with the security part of Copernicus. And we will see that there are some links with this kind of new community. And lastly, I would like to introduce Stéphane Isoard. You heard him about, already during these 2 days. Is the head of the group Water and Marine, working in the European Environmental Agency, and is a member of our Scientific and Technical Advisory Committee, working very closely with us to drive CMEMS in the right direction. Before to see some examples of what can be done in terms of policy implementation with CMEMS, I wanted that we introduce a study that was done by GRC that helped us, in fact, to assess the print of Copernicus on EC policies, to see where we are and what we should improve. And for this, I would like Jan, and Gret also participated, but Jan that participated to this study, which was quite heavy and really meaningful, to introduce a bit this study so that we have a landscape.
Thank you, Fabienne. Thank you. Good evening to everybody. Let me share my screen. I have only one slide, so let's see if you can see it. I hope you can see my slide. So just to give you a little bit of background why we did this study, it comes back. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Great. Okay, thank you. So the background, just let me give you some background of this study. It comes back to the space strategy for Europe, which was drafted in 2016. So apart from the space regulation we have in European Commission, this space strategy actually states that Commission itself should encourage the use of space services, data and application in EU policies, wherever it is possible and wherever there is a effective solutions for wherever they provide effective solution. And Commission should also promote the uptake of Copernicus, but also EGNOS and Galileo solutions in EU policies. So that was the background where actually Commission was tasked to see where space solution, and in our case Earth observation, can serve the European policies. So what we did was we analyzed what is the current usage within the European policies of Earth observation and Copernicus, and we wanted also to identify opportunities where Earth observation can actually serve better. So what we did a survey across Commission. In the end, the study includes 17 directorate generals, which are dealing with different kind of policies: environment, maritime, energy, agriculture, land use, forestry, climate change, and so on. And we come up with some recommendation. We come up with the summaries of where Earth observation can help in policy implementation, of course, including the maritime policies for maritime. As an output, we have two reports. One is internal, and another one is a public summary, which can be found on our website and on EU Shop. Yeah, and this study served immediately for definition of the user requirements for Copernicus program. So this is the document which will be probably covered also by Fabienne later on. Yeah, so this was we can see this study as kind of kickoff or prototype of the subsequent activities which will follow, will be mentioned by Gret later. And this study actually contributed to the creation of Knowledge Center on Earth observation, which Gret will talk about later. So I would like to finish here, so later we can have some question and answers. So thank you.
Yes, picking some of the examples that we have in this study, I think, Brett, this would be interesting to have your point of view on the climate dimension of all of this. For the EU, the Paris Agreement and the climate policies are really important. This is highlighted in the Green Deal. This is one of the most important targets that we will have in the next 7 years. We are talking about climate law. We are talking about zero pollution. We still have problems in the Water Framework Directive, for example, with the water quality, especially for the oceans. Could you tell us more about what has been done, what could be done still to improve in these area of policies?
Thank you, Fabienne. Yes, indeed. The oceans are very important for climate and are very important for our President von der Leyen. She mentioned as well that what gets measured gets done at the last climate COP. So I think that holds for emissions on land, but also we need to take care of the ocean. The ocean has, of course, a huge heat, specific heat capacity. We know this. If you live close to the sea, it has a cooling effect in summer and a warming effect in winter. But in particular as well on the carbon cycle, the global carbon balance, also there you have an important role that the oceans play. First of all, they take up half of the increase in the atmospheric carbon. Yeah, we would like to get in balance, but it is very important that so when we emit a bit, that they can take that up. And that is, I'm talking about 2.5 gigatons of carbon per year. In addition, the oceans are as well a reservoir of dissolved inorganic carbon in there. And with increasing temperature, this could be slowly but steadily released. And here we are talking about 38 teratons of carbon. And so that is a huge source on which we need to carefully look. I would like to refer again to what we have seen in the beginning of Mr. Gaspar. We know as well that seagrass, like as well in the coral reefs and so on, that they suffer very much of temperature increases, and that this can turn sinks in the ocean to sources, and that needs to be carefully monitored, and we do hope that with the CMEMS this is monitored. Now, on your second part of your question, you mentioned the Water Framework Directive, and indeed fresh water is very important. We do know that the climate target of 2 degrees might be that we have 3 or 4 degrees increase, that people do not care always too much about that. However, it will be water shortage that people will care very much about it. And we have seen already in some cities how on certain days, I'm talking of Cape Town, I'm talking of some Indian cities, have been already facing this shortage. And therefore it is very important that we monitor fresh water, and there are ways, Copernicus is monitoring that. And we have seen both the extent of the fresh water that is changing very much. Also, the quality of water with the turbidity that can be seen from space is changing as well. Now, I'm talking about huge changes. So I'm talking about 80,000 kilometers square of lakes that has gone lost. At the other hand, I'm as well talking about droning land, 180,000 square kilometers, that is turned into lakes. So you see that this is a huge migration and shift of where water is available in a certain way. Now, the agriculture is one of the biggest consumers of water. And we can see as well from space how certain areas, and I'm talking about areas in North African countries, in the Middle East, but as well in Spain, where these areas are seeing their groundwater table reducing, and with that as well some zones becoming more arid. Yeah, we do hope to further see the collaboration both with the Copernicus Climate Change Service and CMEMS, as well as with the Copernicus Atmospheric Monitoring Service, also there, because there the CO2 monitoring system will be embedded. And I know that in the Horizon 2020 project, there is the collaboration between CMEMS and ECMWF for that. And that is, I think, very, very important. And the monitoring will help us to visualize that there is an urgent need to take action. We do hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. I would invite all the speakers, all the attendees to send questions so that we can answer to them. Please feel free to react during the talk. This is one side. The other side is we have plenty of other sides for implementing policies where CMEMS can act. And one side is about what I said before, is that we could also use CMEMS with different user communities trying to serve, I would say, a wider range of policies than originally sought. And this is an example that Jan, please, you could develop, especially with communities related to security, fisheries, people where we are not familiar in the environmental strict side of CMEMS, but are still there, very important. Jan, could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so what we will see in years to come is the synergy between the services, you know, because now Copernicus services, they have dedicated communities of users, and I think we will see more and more cross section between the services. So, for example, in the case of security community, which is served by Copernicus Security Service, you know, there we have maritime surveillance, which is needing and which is using lots of products which are actually made for marine environment. So, for example, wind directions, turbidity, temperature, salinity, plus also modeling, drifting models. So all these data are, of course, relevant to maritime service users as the environmental protection and state of the ocean, but they are also very relevant for security community, because they really need to know, they really need to have data about the environment they are operating in. Yeah. For example, sea ice monitoring. Yeah, each community is looking at it from different angle, but in the end of the day, both communities are using it. So these synergies will have to be further fostered. Of course, there is a discussion between these two services in place, and there are discussions how to increase this kind of cooperation. You know, another example is that CMEMS actually helped to you know, it became kind of bridge between communities which were not able to speak the same language. So through the spatial dimension of the data and access to the data, it is possible to have a dialogue between environmental protection and fisheries, for example. Yeah, because if you show the spatial dimension of the data, of the practically the same data, it is possible to discuss more about the usage. Yeah. So one practical example is when you look at the European hake nurseries. Yeah. So if you look at them spatially, so you are able to tell fisheries where they should be careful not to damage European hake nurseries, because they would damage their future stock. Yeah. So this is one of the examples. So these kind of bridges should be encouraged again in the future, so that Copernicus will become more effective program. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Jan, for it. That's something which is really important, and that will be improved in the next months and years in order to cross-fertilize across services to reach a larger community and better implement policies, and also better implementing policies because policies are also segmented, and by using services like Copernicus, we can help in fertilizing and linking between the policies. This is a point that Stefan may address. And by the way, I would like to give the floor to Stefan, because I would like to come to, we are talking about EU policies, but one important thing is the national dimension for implementing EU policies. Environmental policies, climate change monitoring is defined at EU level, but it's implemented by major EU agencies. But most of the implementation or the reporting has to be made by the member states. And that's where CMEMS can be important in providing data and helping member states to do this exercise. And talking about that, I would like to have your feeling and on that, Stefan, that you're working closely with member states on that.
Thank you very much, Fabienne, and thank you also for inviting the European Environment Agency to this session. Thanks for the question. I think it's absolutely key, because Copernicus is, as you said, user-driven, policy-driven, and when it comes to policy, there is a huge potential to be realized. And it links very much to the activities of the member states and the reporting that member states do under the different EU directives at regular intervals. I just want to remind everybody of the basics. The state of the marine environment is quite in poor status. Please refer to the European Commission implementation report of June, but also the European Environment Agency report we published in June called Marine Messages 2. When you look at different elements, contaminants in seas, or biodiversity, or eutrophication, marine litter, to name a few of them, the status and the state is quite poor. The implementation gap that we see, the policies are not implemented on time and do not achieve in general the targets and the objectives which have been set, are also due to insufficient monitoring. We can see that the data which is reported to the EA every 6 years under the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, for example, is delivered late. There are quality issues, and there are many gaps in the data being reported. So there's a huge potential here for Copernicus, I think, to further support the countries in monitoring the environment and better understanding the state of the environment, and therefore being in better situation for acting on it and having integrated management, meaning putting in place measures which take care of the environment, but also take care of the maritime sectors, maritime activities, which are obviously very important to member countries. One of the issues we have when we look at the state of the marine environment, but also state of water, meaning fresh water in Europe, is that the methodologies, they tend to change between countries. They are not the same monitoring methodologies, and also the methodologies, they tend to change across time. And this is one area where Copernicus can greatly improve, I think, the reporting of member countries in supporting harmonization, coherence of methodologies for monitoring the state of the marine environment across time and across space. Given that the fact that, given the characteristics of the Copernicus Marine Services, of course, there would be also an additional benefit that data would be delivered close to nil real time, and that would be a very substantial improvement, because at this point in time we receive data every 6 years. This improvement in the availability of data would really be supporting a better assessment of the marine environment, and as I said before, better designing of solutions. One element I mentioned before, and I'm sorry if some have already heard me discussing this, but I think that there's a need also for the reporting community under the EU policies and the Copernicus services to be cooperating in a more close fashion, because there's a need to map the needs from those reporting data with the supply of data and products from Copernicus. So I've been advocating that under the common implementation strategy, for example, under the directives, there would be regular meetings and regular exchange of information at technical levels between these two communities in order to pilot and demonstrate the applicability of data and products from Copernicus. The last point on this is that there are regional characteristics and differences in Europe. So this is also very important when doing this work, that the data and products from Copernicus are taking into account these regional aspects so that it's relevant for member countries. The second point I wanted to mention, and I will be brief, is very much about the European Green Deal and all the different strategies that have been adopted under the Green Deal, in particular the biodiversity strategy to 2030 and also the Zero Pollution Action Plan. There's a huge agenda now on protection of the marine environment and also on restoration. And I want to highlight here two potential opportunities for Copernicus Marine. One is about monitoring. We are developing monitoring frameworks for these different strategies, monitoring the progress in the implementation of the strategies, but also monitoring the progress in the state of the marine environment and environment as a whole. And there is the potential for Copernicus, of course, to be able to provide data and products that would be used in this monitoring framework of the Green Deal and the strategies, which are the EU first priority for the years to come. And then the other point under this chapeau of the European Green Deal is very much about the idea that the Green Deal is calling for solution and integrated management. So it's not only about mapping the state of the environment, it's about finding sustainable and robust solutions for the environment, but also for the maritime sectors when it comes to oceans. So it's very important also, I think, for Copernicus when looking into the future to be able to provide data and knowledge which is actionable, which can be used by policymakers in order to provide recommendations on solutions. And when it comes to the ocean, of course, it means also involving closely the different actors of the maritime sectors, to name obvious ones, fisheries and maritime transport, which need to be associated closely to this as well. I think I'm going to close here and take questions if there are any. Thank you.
Before closing and giving the floor for question and answer, we are running out of time. But I had a last question. If you could answer very quickly, Stefan, to it, because when we're talking about policy implementation, we always think about agencies, administrations, scientists, and so on. But what is the role of industry in this game? Because implementing the Green Deal it has to also be implemented by the industry, and the industry should transition to new forms of new behaviors and new models. In fact, in the blue economy, and but the blue economy for a green transition, I would say. If you could say a word very quickly on that before I conclude, what they could do.
I fully agree with you. That they need to be involved. We have a number of technical cooperation actually with different industry associations in order to exchange data and also to exchange around the challenges that they are facing and what can be done in terms of assessing the situation of the different sectors. For example, just let me mention that at the moment, the EMSA agency in Lisbon on maritime safety agency and the EA here in Copenhagen, we are developing a report on the maritime transport, both highlighting the the environmental impacts of maritime transport, but also highlighting what are the different pathways towards sustainability, because of course the industry is going to bring about the transition to sustainability. So it's not indeed only about the public sector, public bodies. We need to be also talking to a new set of stakeholders, and the maritime transport is one good example. I think again, fisheries is an obvious one, but they are at the core of the transition to sustainability.
Okay, thank you very much for your, yes, I have my mic, for your explanation on that, because this is something important. We are close to the end and to the question and answer. So in fact, we have already quite a lot of examples of what can be done in terms of policy, supporting policy implementations, helping the industry transitioning. We have plenty of use cases in the frame of energy, food, climate change monitoring, pollution, and so on. So, and in parallel on our side, in the Commission side, and with the support of GRC, we made an extensive exercise also to prepare for the future. And to do so, in fact, so we had first this Copernicus for EC study made by GRC, but with this study, working with DGs and working with also the interested entities and also the feedback from the member states, we have been also able to write a staff working document collecting all the user needs that we will drive the future evolution, or that should drive the future evolution of the services in general and CMEMS in particular. And this document will form the Bible for the next MFF for the implementation, because it has been closely reviewed with DGs and worked out end in end with DGs, so that we have a Copernicus program really fitted to their needs and to these common objectives. This is one tool that we set up. We are also setting up a new tool, I would say an enabling tool, to make it concrete and real, so that we have real insight of what should be done by the services, and it will help certainly CMEMS in doing its job. And this is what we call the knowledge center for Earth observation. GRC will implement it for us. This is very nice cooperation. And Gret, before we answer to the questions, could you tell us a bit more on what will be this knowledge center? Gret, are you there? You muted.
Yes. Good. Okay. I hope you see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's clear, as Fabienne mentioned, there are quite a lot of indications that there is an increasing uptake of Copernicus. We have here the example of environmental compliance assurance. We have the example where agriculture farmers are using Copernicus data for the monitoring of the implementation of CAP objectives. We do use as well Copernicus data for reporting back on SDGs. And that is what we want to further strengthen, and we want to have an increase in this uptake by, let's say, also energizing other services to use Copernicus data. So for that we have, so together with DG DEFIS, we have a knowledge center on Earth observation that will be launched in April. And that should provide this efficient internal coordination mechanism inside the Commission. So it is about uptake of Copernicus data into EU policies, into the regulation. An example is the land use change and forestry regulation, and as well using it for monitoring the implementation of these policies. And we want to assure as well that there is the evolution of the Copernicus program, so that we have products that are fit for purpose for these political, so the policy priorities, so that we are responsive, and in the end that we can have a better regulation. And so therefore we have these two pillars in a certain way. So we on one hand side collect user requirements and translate that really into requirements for Copernicus products. We do want to have as well an horizon scanning, a screening of latest technologies that should flow in and should be taken up also in Copernicus in service to the EU policy makers. And that will be done as well in a better coordinated way with external partners, but that will be in, let's say, a horizontal way together with DG DEFIS. I would like to stop the discussion here. More information you will definitely hear in one of the next Copernicus committee meetings, but we look forward for having this put in place, and we see already from user policy DGs large enthusiasm towards this knowledge center on Earth observation.
Okay, so now I will try to pick up some of the questions that we received. If we don't answer directly to all the questions, we will do it after the session, don't worry. So just, for example, one from Björn Eriksson, he asked, do you expect that Copernicus Environmental Services and Security Services will jointly engage in technology development that have impact both on the scientific research of important climatic processes around the Arctic ice, as well as operation and safety at sea, referring to groundbreaking technological development beyond the scope of industry players? So I can answer to this question because we have two questions inside of it. First of all, yes, we have a strong will to I would say, mutualize all what is done in all services related to the Arctic, to have some like an Arctic hub where you can find all the information related to the monitoring of the Arctic for environmental purposes, climatic purposes, societal purposes, and to drive, I would say, the development of an Arctic portfolio, which is taking more and more the state-of-the-art science on what can be done. This is one trend and very important for the climatic dimension. Another action, which is started already now since 1 year, and really linking between CMEMS and the security services, and mainly EMSA, is also to work with the ice chart services for safety at sea, and in order to safeguard the situation at sea along routes. And for example, we already design with them some new products related to iceberg detection, and this is a very close cooperation with the ice services, European, national, and also the international group for ice services, so that we develop some trustful information in terms of iceberg detection for safety at sea. This is examples of what we have in mind. But Arctic will have a dedicated focus, and by the way, we plan to fly new satellites to better monitor the Arctic. This is one question. I have another one from a marine analyst. He doesn't give his name. He said, yesterday Stefan spoke about environmental indicators in support of the EU Green Deal. What about an hackathon fully dedicated to these indicators, challenging all data scientists? Whatever the tool hackathon or not, this is an interesting question. WikiO being a great service giving access to hackathon participants would be a great idea. Stefan, have you any idea about challenging data scientists to better address the environmental indicators?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mentioned previously that there's a need for policymakers to better understand where the data is sitting, because when we go about ocean observation, there are a diversity of data sets and initiatives around with different knowledge hubs and centers. And I think hackathon idea is a good idea, because then it would push the community to make it practical for use within the policy setting. So I think that's a great idea, and I know that DG Marit in that area has been hosting a number of hackathons. So that's an idea we could suggest, actually. Yeah, thanks for that.
A last one before we close. Just a quick chat to Sami. Sami, I may not answer to your question online, but I will answer to your question offline. Don't worry. Sami knows me, so that's why. I have a question from Emanuele Baum, maybe for you, Gret. your mic is off, which is where I lost my question. Does the Commission acknowledge science indication about measured Earth energy imbalance? And what quantitative actions are being planned by Europe to reduce this imbalance in the Green New Deal framework at aim to achieve a 350 ppm objective this century? Oh, you answered, that's fine.
It's just a small addition maybe. So we do acknowledge this. We do look with the GRC into albedo effects, and we do look what land use change is a big part in that. It's not only just about afforestation, but also changing types of crops. Nature-based solutions are one of the proposals here. It's not only that, but this is one of the proposals where we do work with the GRC on finding the best way for addressing this.
Thank you. I saw that, Stéphane, you answered to Mr. Legrand for Albins. I think the role of regional conventions is really important. I think it's not to replace EU by national or national by EU. I think we need both. We need the contribution of everyone, regional convention, national monitoring, and EU monitoring, because we need plenty of data as much as possible and also access to knowledge. So this is something extremely important. Maybe a last question, and I will conclude answering to Sami. What do you think about the need to have a closer link to the Zero Pollution Action Plan under the Green Deal, where there is a clear objective for regular integrated monitoring and outlook? Yes, I fully agree with you that we should have all services included in Copernicus, an integrated view of what we can do on terms of the Zero Pollution Action Plan. And I read it carefully, and I think we can bring plenty of things with, I would say, integrating everything and focusing on zero pollution, because we have a lot to do. And yes, Sami, it's obvious this is something to do. So maybe I will conclude now because time is running. So just to tell you where we are, we do a lot. We still have a lot to do, plenty of opportunity, and we still have to link science and state-of-the-art science to reach these policy objectives. And that's the key of CMEMS and Copernicus, making this bridge. And that's extremely important, so that the scientific community and the operational community and the policymakers works together through this kind of tools. I encourage you to attend to the meeting tomorrow morning in day 3, because it will talk about the future, about ocean challenges, promising plan. And I think it will be very interesting to have the practical view of what CMEMS intends to do and have in terms of plans, because we have a rolling science plan which is matching service evolution needs, and also listening to our guest speakers from Commission and major agencies in helping that. So thank you for attending. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for our guest speakers. It was really nice to organize and to discuss about it. And I see you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabienne, and thank you to all of you for this very good and very high-level discussion on the European policies and the link with the Copernicus services on the marine in particular. So it's time to close the second day of the General Assembly. I think it was very good discussion, excellent series of presentation on discussion and exchange, in particular between producers and users, including policy. That's great to see how people are interacted, and also through these different interactive sessions. So it's time now to close. So tomorrow will be the last day of the General Assembly. So there will be focus on the Copernicus 2. So as our plan for the next 7 years, and also discussion with all of our stakeholders. So I think it would be a very interesting session discussion. So I really encourage all of you to join us again and be there tomorrow at 9 sharp, because we have a lot of presentations, so we will really start at 9. So take some rest, have a good night, and see you all tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.